podcast, URL podcast. Today we have someone who is anti-bullying advocate. He's a speaker, trainer. I know him for nearly a decade now. He's working for creating a culture of emotional safety at workplace and school. Please welcome Ron Prasad. How are you, Ron?
Thank you, Gautam. Thanks for having me. I appreciate this. Thank you.
Thanks, man. Thanks for your time. So, straight to the question. Okay. Please explain bullying and bullying in school and bullying in workplace.
Yes. So the technical definition of bullying that I always use is that bullying is unwanted offensive behavior repeated over time with an imbalance of power. Okay, so I'll say that again. Unwanted offensive behavior repeated over time with an imbalance of power. And that's a very good question, Gautam, that bullying in schools and bullying in workplace, are they different? So there are few different dynamics. However, the behavior or the impact of the bully on the target of the bullying is pretty much same regardless of where it happens. So in schools, people might say that kids are growing up, they're just, discovering themselves, they want to have fun. And sometimes there could be that pack mentality. I'll give you an example. I was speaking to a friend of mine whose 4.5-year-old child is going to kindergarten. And there is one particular child who's been picking on this little boy for the past few weeks. And when he gets picked on, other kids encourage the bully to go and hit this boy. So it's that pack mentality, sometimes which is very dangerous, regardless of where it happens, it's very dangerous. The thing about workplace bullying, one thing that I have found is that it's quite common for the person above, for example, the manager, to bully their worker, subordinate, team member, whatever you want to call it, right? So that imbalance of power, when I describe what bullying is more pronounced, more evident in the workplace than it is at schools, in my experience and opinion. I'm not saying it can't happen at schools. I mean, it's very common. You might know this. Kids in higher grades or higher levels, like a 15-year-old kid picking on a 12-year-old kid, so there's the imbalance of power. Physically, the kid is bigger, few years ahead at school. That can also take place. The one important point I'd like to make is that whether it happens at work, at school, at any organization, at a sports club, bullying is totally unacceptable because no one deserves to get bullied.
Nice, very nice. So, what does bullying actually looks like beyond obvious aggression? I mean, aggression we can understand, but yeah, there are different level of it. Please,
Sure.
Ron.
Sure. So, like you said, physical is one of the aspects of bullying which is common. There's the verbal side of things, constantly putting somebody down and just telling them something that's really offensive and nasty, constantly teasing them, verbally harassing them, saying things that are offensive. Then there is the social element, so social bullying. And let me share an example with you, Gautam. I gave a speech at a school back in 2017 or 18. And there were a group of year 7 kids that I was talking to. And one boy said to me, he said, "Sir, at lunchtime, I wish to play football with this particular group of kids, but they don't let me play, right?" And that is social bullying. When you socially exclude somebody from being part of your circle or any sort of activity because you don't like that person, and it happens over and over again. Now, Gautam, that is also applicable in the workplace. So let's just say you and I work together in a team, and we've got 2 or 3 other friends, and someone else is working in the team, and we don't like this person. So Friday night, I say to you, Gautam, you, myself, 2 others, let's go for drinks, but let's not invite this person. And then the following week, we go for lunch. We don't invite this person. The week after, we go watch a movie. We don't invite this person. Then we go to a work meeting and we say, nah, probably best not to take this person. So can you see that pattern that's happening all the time? Social bullying is another aspect. And then the big one, Gautam, it's online bullying or cyber bullying, as they call it,
Oh,
which
yes.
is really big at the moment, which is really big. I mean, when I was a child growing up in the northern suburbs of Melbourne, you get pushed, you get slapped in the face, they swear at you, they tip your locker, they rip your clothes, they take your books and throw your books in the bin. Those kind of stuff happen. And when you come home, you're safe because, back then there was no internet. But now, with the advent of internet and social media, it's a 24-hour thing. Anyone can get bullied online. And my advice to anyone who gets bullied online is to go to the eSafety website, esafety.gov.au. The eSafety Commissioner has got a website. It's got a lot of valuable information. I won't go into it too much, in this interview, Gautam. But anyone who's getting bullied, go to the eSafety website and find out resources on how you can help yourself or your child if your child is getting bullied online.
Wow. And what you mentioned, these things, I mean, I guess any community atmosphere, these things are happening, right? There is a like a small group, immediate group, bigger group, little bigger group. But yeah, when it comes to like a professional environment or school or institutionalized setup,
Yes, yes,
we have to look after this.
yes,
Yeah, I
yes,
can. Good.
agree.
Now, you always talk about and you are very vocal about it, which is belonging.
Yes.
Please explain that.
Okay.
And
So,
please explain from both ends. I mean, the
yes,
person versus the institution.
yes, yes, yes. So my take on belonging is that belonging automatically gets rid of bullying. So if you create belonging in any environment, right, at a school or workplace in particular, the chances of bullying taking place are very slim because if you create belonging, it's a welcoming environment. People are free to express themselves, and there is a lot of emotional safety. Like you said, Gautam, at the beginning of this podcast, there is emotional safety, which I advocate all the time. So, belonging in a nutshell is creating a space where anyone is free to express themselves, anyone is free to be themselves. And in a workplace, Gautam, I'll give you a simple example. We go to a meeting, right? And there is this new campaign or project coming up, and you are the manager, and you explain to everyone, let's just say there's 10 people in the team, you explain this new campaign we are doing, and then you ask, does anyone have any opinion or anyone have any input? And I'm just quiet. I don't say anything. I'm just quiet, like I don't want to say anything. And then you ask, and then you come to me and you say, Ron, what do you think? And I'll say, oh, no, nothing, Gautam, nothing. I'm happy with that. If there was a culture of belonging, I would be free to express myself without any fear, without any fear. And that's the big thing. When you create a culture of belonging in any institution or any sort of organized environment, people are very free to express themselves. Now, to your other question, individual versus the organizational structure, right? When it comes to individuals, my opinion is that it's everyone's responsibility to create belonging. And you can do simple things by being more inclusive. Now, we hear the word inclusive and diversity a lot, and sometimes it's just a tokenistic gesture by a big organization. They just want to tick the box and say, we are very diverse, we are very inclusive. But does that create belonging by default? I can tell you through experience, it doesn't. It doesn't. So, at an individual level, to create belonging, first thing I would suggest you do is you look at your own behaviors. Am I doing things on a day-to-day basis that show that I am creating belonging and I'm encouraging an inclusive environment where everyone can feel free to express themselves? And then another thing is this, I would ask myself, do I have any what I call blind spots? So you drive a car, there's a blind spot where you can't see, right? Do I have any discrimination or discriminatory blind spots that I'm not aware of, like subconsciously? If I look at a person, I go, oh, really, this person? this person is of particular background or practices a particular religion. So you do a really good internal check of yourself and find out, am I living a life where I can openly express to others that I encourage and create belonging? At an organizational level, Gautam, the second part of your question, it starts from the top. It's the leader's responsibility to create belonging, and then it trickles down to everyone else. And simple things the leaders can do, for example, having an open door policy, right? Open door policy. I'll share an example with you. I was speaking to a man probably late last year, say November 2024. He was working for a big organization, and Gautam, I won't mention any names here for privacy reasons, right?
That's all right.
And he said to me that he worked in the city. He was a manager, so he was pretty senior. And he said that whenever he goes to the office, as soon as the lift doors open and he has to step out on his floor, from memory, he was like working on floor number 23 or something. He goes, my heart starts beating faster. I start sweating, my hands start shaking. I get really anxious, nervous before I walk to my desk. And I ask the question to your listeners, Gautam, does that organization reflect a sign of belonging or a culture of belonging where somebody who is quite senior feels like he is not welcome there, he's not free to express himself? The answer is no. So, from an organizational perspective, starts from the top. But like I said before, it's everyone's responsibility. You don't have to be a manager or the CEO or the managing director of an organization. Small steps can make a big difference.
Mm, nice, nice. Now, as I mean, we are fortunate that we are living in a very multicultural society. So some cultures value toughness over emotional safety, like Middle East or maybe Afghanistan, those places. Some hierarchy, like Indians, Pakistans, Bangladesh, and all. So how do we balance this resilience building with belonging?
Sure. Very good question, Gautam. Very good question. I'll share an example with you. I was delivering a leadership program at a school in the northern suburbs of Melbourne, and there were year 10 and year 11 kids there. And part of leadership, we touched about safe environments, emotional safety, and I spoke about bullying. And I clearly remember this. One boy spoke up in year 11, so he must have been, what, 16, 17? And he openly shared his story with us, right? And I won't mention his name, and, I can just give you factual information. He was a refugee from Iraq, Iraqi refugee. He came to Australia when he was about 8 or 9 years old. And he said to me, and Gautam, I apologize if this is going into too much information and this might touch some of your listeners. And he said to me, he said, sir, if I get bullied at school and I go home and tell my dad that I'm getting bullied, my dad will laugh at me. He
Mm,
will laugh at me and he'll say, don't come and tell me this. Go back to school and handle your own affairs, handle your own business with the bully, right? He said, I've come from a culture where it was very common to see our loved ones getting shot in front
mm,
of us. And I'm sorry if this touches people. Please accept my apologies. It's not my intention to,
mm,
create or trigger any trauma in anyone who's listening. So please accept my apologies. But just to cover what you mentioned, Gautam, which is a very good point. In some cultures, toughness is expected, especially of boys and men, right? You're supposed to be tough. And my response to that is, if you get bullied at school and you come from a background where toughness or masculinity or aggression against aggression is expected of you, please remember one thing: violence is not the answer when it comes to bullying. Okay, violence is not the answer. I never advocate that. If you are being pushed in a corner and there are two boys hitting you and you're, like I say, 15-year-old boy, yes, by all means, defend yourself. But I'm not saying that, the next day you take a stick or a cricket bat and go and beat up the bully. That will not solve anything. Okay, that will not solve anything. So people who come from those cultures where toughness is expected and valued, please realize that there are support mechanisms available in this country, Western society, at schools, education systems. So utilize those support systems, like there are counselors, there can be mediation, there are social welfare coordinators at school. So there are plenty of options. And got them at work, there's human resources, people and culture. If you get bullied at work, there's the Fair Work Commission, WorkSafe Victoria for people in Victoria. There is the Australian Human Rights Commission. There are plenty of options for you to get support. Now, the second part of your question, in a hierarchical culture, like you mentioned before, that's a very good question. If you experience bullying in a hierarchical culture where you come from, my response to this is that realize that no one deserves to get bullied, regardless of where you are in the hierarchy or regardless of how much your upbringing was influenced by that hierarchical culture, right? No one deserves to get bullied. So, like I said, workplace, classical example, you've got a manager who's got like 10 or 15 people under him or her, and then there's that hierarchy, right? You report up to the manager. But if the manager starts saying something that's offensive, unwanted, repeated, imbalance of power, there is no excuse. There is no excuse. So regardless of the hierarchy, everyone should feel safe, emotionally safe, feel a sense of belonging, regardless of where you fit in that hierarchical ladder or system.
Wow, nice. So, like, many of us who are coming from a privileged background
Yes,
and or underprivileged background,
yes.
and because of that, we bring some level of unconscious bias while we are behaving outer world. So, how does that affect, or how does that manifestation kind of, level it out, or how we can handle that?
Very good question, Gautam. Very good question. So if you come from a privileged background, for example, right, you will not understand what it is like for people who have come from underprivileged backgrounds, okay? I'll share an example with you. I was doing a workshop at a school, and this boy, year 10, so must have been what, 15 or maybe 16, he shared his story with us. He was in year 10 living with his grandma, okay? And very tough situation, didn't have money for lunch, so the school was helping him, didn't do his homework all the time. Sometimes kids complained that he wore dirty clothes to school. So if you come from a bit more of a privileged background, it's very easy to judge other people, right? So easy to form a judgment in your head and say, this person's doing this, this, this. And this boy's story, Gautam, was very touching. He was in year 10. His dad was in jail for some crime that he committed, and he had not seen his dad for years. And his mom was at a drug rehab facility because she was addicted to ice. And he was living with his grandma, who was probably in her 70s at the time, so retired. Her health wasn't the best. So this poor little boy, 15, 16 years of age, being judged and criticized at work because no one understood his situation, would go home, look after his grandma first thing. His grandma would tell him, can you cook some dinner? She'll give him directions. So he'd cook dinner, he'd do the dishes, he'd wash up, and then he would do his homework, right? A lot of responsibility for a boy who's only 15 or 16, okay? 15 or 16. Now, people who have had a privileged background will not understand that. So if you are coming from a privileged background, my suggestion to you is this: have some empathy in your head. Put yourself in the shoes of the person that you might be judging or criticizing, and ask yourself, where is this person coming from? Second question, how would I last in that person's situation?
Mm, nice, very nice. So, what we need to know as an individual?
As an individual, like I touched on earlier, beware of your discrimination blind spots. What is it about you that you could change to make yourself a better person and be a better example for other people? So when they look at you, they say, yeah, this person, he or she really embodies, encapsulates, encompasses all the characteristics of somebody who is there to create belonging, make others feel safe and happy, make others feel like they matter, regardless of your upbringing or background or whatever or wherever you've come from. I think as human beings, we owe it to other humans and to Mother Earth and to society to be an example where you feel like you are making a positive impact. It can only be one person you touch. However, that person might do something positive and it can create a domino effect. And Gautam, this is one quote that I use when I do speeches on bullying at schools. I tell kids all the time, being kind doesn't cost money. It's for free. Okay. Kindness is for free. It doesn't cost money. It costs you a little bit of your time. That's it. So if you can all start expressing kindness, friendliness, empathy, we'll be living in a much better space where bullying, discrimination, all these things will gradually start to die out.
Excellent. Excellent. Nice one. And we are actually in the last phase of our conversation. I want you to repeat the way you actually started the conversation in the definition of bullying, that power imbalance. Please repeat that and give a couple of mantra around it.
Thank you so much, Gautam. Thank you. So, like I said at the start, bullying is unwanted offensive behavior repeated over time with an imbalance of power. I'll say it again. Bullying is unwanted offensive behavior repeated over time with an imbalance of power. So, Gautam, let's end this with a call to action, right? If you observe that happening anywhere, workplace, school, sports, community organization, volunteer organization, NGO, wherever, the point I'm making is that bullying does not discriminate. It can happen to anyone, anywhere, anytime. Okay? It can happen to anyone. So, my call to action to your listeners is that if you observe bullying anywhere and you see these things happening, offensive, unwanted behavior repeated over time with an imbalance of power, please take a stand. Take a stand. First thing I would do is I would support the person who's getting bullied. I would say, I'm sorry to see you're going through this. You don't deserve this. How can I help you? That simple question, how can I help you or what can I do for you, will make the person who is getting bullied feel like he or she is being supported, really
Mhm.
supported. And that makes them feel like I'm not alone in this. I've got somebody here to support me. Okay. Second thing, if you feel comfortable, talk to the bully and just ask, why are you doing this? Why
Mhm.
are you doing this? Gautam, according to my experience, no one is born a bully. It's a learned behavior people learn. And when you learn something, you can also unlearn it. Okay? You can also unlearn it. And being kind is free, being friendly is fun. So, my call to action to your listeners is that be aware of bullying. It can happen anywhere, to anyone at any time. And please take a stand because you will be setting a good example for the rest of society on how you can make one difference to one person at one time.
Excellent. On that, as you all know, if you want to live your life in your own terms, this is the right place for you. This is You Are a Podcast. Thank you, Ron.